As Mara stood there, unsure whether to move forward or turn back into the rain, her eyes landed on a small table where a man and his 2 children were seated. Unlike everyone else, they didn't look away. The man, Rowan, watched her with a softness that didn't make her feel small or out of place. His kids, Isla and Grady, weren't scared or uncomfortable, they simply looked at her with honest curiosity, the kind children have before the world teaches them otherwise. Gathering her courage, Mara stepped closer and whispered the simplest question, one that carried the weight of all her exhaustion. Can I sit here? Rowan didn't hesitate, not even for a second. He gently pulled his chair back, making space in a way that felt natural, not forced, as if she had always been welcome there. Mara paused, almost unsure how to react to a kindness she wasn't used to. But Rowan's warm nod and the calm presence of his children steadied her. As she lowered herself into the seat, something subtle but powerful shifted in the air, because for the first time that day, someone had truly seen her. On a cold, rainy afternoon, when most people were rushing for warmth and shelter, a small moment quietly unfolded, one that no one saw coming. The cafe was buzzing with the usual noise, clattering cups, whispered conversations, the soft hum of rain tapping against the windows. People hurried inside, shaking off umbrellas and brushing droplets from their jackets, too caught up in their own worlds to notice much around them. And yet, just inside the doorway, stood a girl who didn't quite blend into the scene. Mara, only 12, drenched from the rain, balanced carefully on her prosthetic leg while gripping her crutches that shook slightly under her weight. Her hair, tied in a messy ponytail, clung to her face, and her clothes looked worn from more than just the weather. But what spoke the loudest wasn't her limp or her struggle, it was the quiet loneliness in her eyes, the kind that came from carrying more than a child should ever have to. She scanned the crowded cafe, just hoping for a place to rest, yet every table she approached suddenly claimed to be full, as if kindness was too much to spare. And that was when everything quietly began to change. As soon as Mara's mother realized her daughter was safe, she pulled her close with trembling hands, thanking Rowan over and over with a voice that cracked between fear and gratitude. Rowan smiled softly, brushing it off the way people do when they don't think they've done anything extraordinary. But Mara stood there staring up at him, her eyes filling in a way that made the moment suddenly still. She wasn't crying out of sadness, these were the kind of tears that come when someone who has been holding everything in for far too long finally feels seen. She told him quietly that no one outside her mother had ever gone out of their way for her like this, not in a way that felt genuine, not in a way that made her feel safe. Rowan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, reminding her that kindness wasn't rare, even if life sometimes made it seem that way. His children waved goodbye, and Mara held on to that moment as if it were something precious she didn't want to lose. As she and her mother disappeared inside, Rowan realized that the entire day had shifted because of one small, simple yes, and sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life. When the food was gone and the warmth had settled into her cheeks, Mara's expression shifted from comfort to something more fragile. She lowered her eyes and admitted, barely above a whisper, that she was afraid to go home. Not because her mother would be angry, never that, but because she knew Leona would blame herself for Mara walking so far alone. Her mother worked endlessly, carrying the weight of 2 lives on her shoulders, and Mara hated the idea of adding even a drop more worry to the burden she already carried. Rowan listened quietly, feeling a familiar ache tug at him. He knew too well what it meant to struggle, to parent alone, to hide exhaustion behind a steady smile for the sake of your children. Without making it dramatic, he told Mara he would drive her home. The way she stared at him, half disbelief, half relief, said more than words ever could. As they stepped outside into the fading rain, he held the door open for her, and she moved with a kind of cautious gratitude. When they reached her building and her mother rushed out in panic, the relief on her face said everything. Gratitude filled the moment like a breath finally released. Rowan listened to her with a heaviness in his chest, the kind that comes when someone else's pain echoes something inside your own life. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush to fill the silence. he simply let her speak until her words drifted off into the soft hum of the cafe. And then, without making it a big gesture, he stood and walked to the counter. Moments later, he returned with a warm sandwich and a steaming cup of hot chocolate, placing them gently in front of her. Mara froze, unsure whether she should accept it, almost as if kindness was something she had to earn. But Rowan's reassuring nod told her she didn't owe him anything, not an explanation, not a reason, not even permission to be tired. Slowly, she wrapped her cold hands around the cup, feeling warmth seep into her fingers like a small miracle. As she took careful bites of the sandwich, Rowan's children began asking her simple questions about school, her favorite subjects, the stickers on her crutches. And Mara answered with that shy, half smile of someone who isn't used to being included, yet wants so badly to belong. In that moment, a quiet healing began. As the warmth of the cafe slowly settled around her, Mara began to speak in the quiet, careful way of someone who isn't used to being listened to. Rowan didn't push, and that gentle patience made it easier for her words to slip out. She explained that she had been walking home from school when her prosthetic leg began to ache, an ache she'd learned to ignore most days, but today it had become too much. There was no bus she could afford, and her mother couldn't leave work early. Double shifts barely kept the bills paid. Mara shared that she had lost her leg as a toddler due to a congenital condition, but she spoke about it without bitterness, almost as if it was just another routine fact of her life. What hurt her more wasn't the missing limb, it was the feeling that she always had to be strong, always had to pretend she wasn't tired, so her mother wouldn't worry. Years of hiding discomfort had made her good at smiling through pain, but today that strength had cracked a little. As she talked, Rowan realized he wasn't just hearing a story, he was witnessing a childhood spent being brave long before it was fair to be.